Today, we're embarking on a pretty profound journey into our source material. We're doing a total reevaluation of what it actually means to lead and thrive in our work. Because you see, this material completely shatters the old myth that leadership is just about being the toughest or, the loudest person in the room. Instead, true leadership requires a massive internal shift.
But before we can get to the solutions, we got to start with a rather painful reality. Why do so few people actually love their jobs? I mean, really think about it. When you go out with friends and someone says, "Oh, I love my job," what happens? Everyone else literally gasps and goes, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky," right? For most of us, finding work we actually love feels like winning this rare, impossible lottery. And that's just madness. Loving your work shouldn't be a privilege. It should be the standard. So how do we get there? How do we build environments where that is the norm?
Section 1. Cultivating an infinite mindset.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Notice the direct contrast between these two completely different ways of operating. A finite mindset is totally obsessed with daily limits. It's asking, how much can I possibly grind out before the sun goes down today? But an infinite mindset, well, that's about looking at the long game. It's not about today's absolute maximum output. It's about what you can achieve over the course of an entire career, or really, an entire lifetime.
To really understand this, the source material shares a fascinating story about two lumberjacks. Every morning, they start chopping wood at the exact same time. Every evening, they stop at the exact same time. But there's a catch. One of the lumberjacks disappears for an hour in the middle of the day, every single day. And yet, day after day, month after month, the guy who takes an hour off actually chops more wood than the guy who works straight through. No way, right? Finally, the exhausted lumberjack asks, "I don't get it. Every day you disappear for an hour and you still chop more wood than me. Where do you go?" And the other lumberjack looks up and delivers this brilliant realization. He says, "Oh, I go home and sharpen my axe." See, taking vacations, turning off your email, totally disconnecting from the office, that isn't a weakness. It's literally sharpening your axe for the infinite game.
And this mindset dictates exactly how we pursue our goals. Our source shares another great story about finishing a run in Central Park. So at the finish line, volunteers were giving away free bagels, but there was a massive line of runners waiting to get them. One friend looks at the situation and says, "The line's too long, let's just go." But the other friend says, "But free bagel." The first friend could only see the obstacle, right, the line, preventing him from getting what he wanted. But the second friend was relentlessly focused on the goal, the bagel itself. He simply walked up, leaned in between two people, and grabbed two bagels out of the box. You can break the rules, you can do it your own way, as long as you don't stop anyone else from getting what they want. You've got to focus on the bagel, not the line.
Section 2. The power of mutual support.
All right, so once you've mastered your internal mindset and focus, we have to look outward to the people around us. Because individual ambition is great, but to truly advance, it has to evolve into collective support. To illustrate this, let's look at the U.S. Navy SEALs, arguably the most elite warriors on the planet. When a SEAL was asked who actually makes it through their brutally grueling election process, he couldn't pinpoint an exact profile for success, but he knew exactly who does not make it. The guys showing up with huge bulging muscles, covered in tattoos, desperate to prove their toughness, yeah, they don't make it. The leaders who love to delegate and never get their own hands dirty, they fail. Even the star college athletes who just haven't been truly tested to the core of their being, they drop out.
So who actually survives? Well, sometimes it's the skinny, scrawny guys. Sometimes it's the guys visibly shivering out of fear. But they all share one defining trait. When they are completely physically spent, when they're emotionally drained and have absolutely nothing left to give, somehow they dig down deep inside themselves and find the energy to help the guy next to them. If you want to be an elite warrior in your field, it's not about how tough or smart you are. It's about getting really, really good at asking for help and helping the person to your left and your right.
Section 3. Listening and leading.
So that peer dynamic is powerful, for sure. But what happens when you step into a broader leadership posture? Let's look at a universally respected leader to anchor our next profound lesson here, Nelson Mandela. He is universally regarded as a truly great leader. And when asked how he learned to lead, he actually credited his father, who was a tribal chief. Mandela would attend tribal meetings with his father and noted two incredibly consistent vital steps. First, they would always sit in a circle. And second, his father was always, without fail, the last to speak.
We're always told we need to learn to listen, but the real skill is learning to hold your opinion. When you walk into a room and immediately say, "All right, here's the problem, here's what I think, but hey, let's go around the room," you've already completely ruined the dynamic. By holding back, you give everyone else the feeling they've genuinely been heard and that they actually contributed. Plus, you get the massive advantage of hearing all their thoughts before you render your own opinion. So practice sitting there, taking it in, and only asking questions to understand why they hold their view. Be the last to speak.
Section 4. Accountability and humility. Now let's shift our focus to the darker, heavier side of leadership, because true leadership demands taking the blame when things go wrong and radically rejecting your own ego when things go right. 70%. That is a shocking number. In the 18th century, a terrifying epidemic called purple fever, or the Black Death of childbed, swept across Europe and America. In some hospitals, a staggering 70% of women who gave birth would die within 48 hours. And this was during the Renaissance. Men of science and empirical data were desperately trying to figure out why this was happening. As it turned out, the answer was horrifyingly simple. Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes finally figured it out in the mid-1800s. The doctors would conduct autopsies on the dead in the morning, and then, without washing their hands, they would go deliver babies in the afternoon. The doctors themselves were the problem. And get this, they ignored Dr. Holmes and called him crazy for 30 years before they finally started sterilizing their hands and instruments, and just like that, the disease vanished. The lesson here? Sometimes you are the problem. You can take all the credit in the world for what goes right, but it has to be a balanced equation. You absolutely must take accountability when you are in the wrong. And that brings us perfectly to humility. Our source shares this incredible anecdote about a former Undersecretary of Defense. One year, while in office, he spoke at a conference. He was flown business class, greeted at the airport, driven to the venue, and handed coffee in a beautiful ceramic cup. Well, the next year, no longer in the position, he spoke at the exact same conference. But this time, he flew coach, took a taxi, walked in the front door himself, and poured his own coffee into a styrofoam cup. He stood on stage and delivered a profound realization. He said, "The ceramic cup was never meant for me. I deserve a styrofoam cup." As you gain success and seniority, people are going to give you perks. Enjoy them, but never forget. They're meant for the position you hold, not for you personally. You will always deserve the styrofoam cup.
Section 5. The Modern Empathy Crisis. Okay, let's shift our tone from personal humility to a more analytical, compassionate look at the macro environment in today's workplace. We have a very real crisis of connection, and the root of much of this crisis actually comes down to neurochemistry. We are dealing with an entire generation growing up in a Facebook and Instagram world, constantly filtering their lives to look picture perfect even when they're deeply depressed. Engagement with our cell phones releases dopamine. That's the exact same highly addictive, numbing chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, drink, or gamble. We have given young people unfettered access to this during the high stress of adolescence.
And because of this hardwired addiction, way too many young adults admit their friendships are just superficial. They literally don't know how to form deep relationships. Worse, they haven't developed coping mechanisms. So when severe stress hits, they don't turn to a person for help, they turn to a device for temporary relief. And here's the real kicker. Older leaders constantly blame this generation, saying they're difficult or unmotivated. But wait a minute, we are the leaders now. We created these corporate and technological environments.
We absolutely cannot blame an entire generation for struggling in the environment we built. Empathy isn't asking, how do I get the most out of my people, as if they're a wet towel you're just trying to wring dry. Empathy is asking, how do I help my people be at their natural best? They are human beings trying to find their way, just looking for a place where someone actually cares about them. We have to relate to what they are going through.
Section 6. Loving where you work.
Which brings us to our emotional climax today, the ultimate goal of true leadership and a well-run organization. There is a massive difference between these two states. Working hard for something we don't care about, that's called stress. But working hard for something we truly love, that is called passion. We need to stop acting like loving your job is some lucky lottery ticket. It is a right. It's a God-given right to love where we work, and we must demand it. We have to demand environments where we feel safe, where we can express vulnerabilities, and where feedback is given to help us grow, not to attack us. When leaders care more about our lives and our joy than just short-term gains, we will respond in kind with our blood, sweat, and tears to see that vision thrive.
So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Will you demand the right to love your job? And more importantly, will you build the infinite mindset, the accountability, and the empathy required to lead others there? It really starts with you. So grab your styrofoam cup, sharpen your axe, and go help the person to your left and your right. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the source material today. Keep sharpening that axe, and please like and subscribe for more videos. I'll see you next time.